Hola muchachos. Okay, today's lesson is going to be still a continuation of preterite formation, but we are focusing on the highly irregular verbs, okay? But before we get into that, let's just make sure we have a solid base and understand what we've already covered thus far, starting with the regular preterite verb endings. These are for actions that have been completed in the past. Okay, for the AR verbs, we say haste, o, hamos, hastáis, haron. As usual, please copy down everything that I've highlighted in yellow. ER and IR verbs, iste, yo, himos, estáis, hieron. Make sure that we get those accents, please, on the yo and on the L forms of those verb endings. In the last chapter, we also covered Kargar-Zar verbs, so let's take a minute and look at those. Okay, these changes are only ever in the yo form of the verb. Okay, kar goes to QUE, gar goes to GUE, zar goes to CE. Another topic that we already covered, and we're going to review again, is stem changing verbs in the preterite. Only IR verbs can stem change in the preterite. They change either E to I or O to U. They can only ever change in the slipper, which is the L in the EOS forms. So AR and ER verbs never stem change in the past. So for example, dormir, dormí, dormiste, durmió. I put it in red. Maybe you could just circle it on your paper. Dormimos, dormisteis, durmieron. In our last chapter, we also learned the verb ver. Okay, this verb conjugates, okay, as all other ER and IR verbs. However, it's irregular because it doesn't take any accents. Vi, viste, vio, vimos, vistáis, vieron. Okay, so now let's look at the new past tense grammar for the preterite that is presented in this chapter. Okay. The verb ir, which means to go, and the verb ser, which means to be, have the exact same conjugations in the preterite tense. Therefore, you must rely on the context of the sentence to determine what the verb means. Note, neither of these take accents. So the conjugations are fui, fuiste, fue, fuimos, fuisteis, fueron. Let's look at some examples. El chico fue a la tienda para buscar una ganga. In this context, it makes sense to say that the boy went to the store to look for a deal. Nosotros fuimos cajeros por un día antes de renunciarnos. So we were cashiers for a day before quitting. It makes sense in this case to conjugate to the verb to be, which is a little confusing, but in English it's an irregular, so it goes to were. Okay, the next part of the new grammar, okay, is going to be some verbs such as hacer, tener, estar, and poder. Okay, these are what we call irregular stem verbs in the preterite. They have a totally different stem, and they take very different verb endings. Note, they don't have any accents either. Let's go through these. Hacer, hice, hiciste, hizo. Now notice that C went to a Z. I put it in red. Please circle it on your paper. Hicimos, hicisteis, hicieron. Tener. Tuve, tuviste, tuvo. Tuvimos, tuvisteis, tuvieron. Estar. Estuve, estuviste, estuvo. Estuvimos, estuvisteis, estuvieron. Poder. Pude, pudiste, pudo. Pudimos, pudisteis, pudieron. Okay. So, based on the conjugations above, you can see that these irregular stem verbs have their own set of endings. It doesn't matter if they're AR, ER, or IR verbs. They take a totally different set of endings. So how do you know which verbs are the irregular stem verbs? Well, you're going to have to just memorize which ones make the change and which ones take these irregular endings. The endings are iste, o. Imos, istais, ieron. As you can probably see, okay, the yo and the l form come from the AR set of verb endings, where the tú and the nosotros, vosotros, and ellos verb endings come from the ER-IR set. Dar is also irregular, okay, but it's not considered an irregular stem verb. The only thing that's weird about it is that it takes IR endings, even though it's an AR verb. Also no accents. Di, diste, dio. Dimos, distais, dieron. Now, that's all the grammar that's presented in the text and will be in the workbook. However, I've decided that you need a little bit more, so we're going to add this as well. Okay. These are also irregular stem verbs. They have the same endings that we just learned in the section above, but we need to also memorize these and use these too. Okay. Venir, vin. Andar, anduv. Poder, we actually just conjugated poder, but that's okay, we can put it here too. Pud. Poner, pus. Querer, quis. Saber, sup. Traer, trach. Decir, dich. Conducir, conduch. Traducir, traduch. Producir, produch. Now, why do these all have asterisks? Well, these verbs drop the I from the eos form ending due to the letter J. So dijeron is wrong, but dijeron is right. Trajeron is wrong. Trajeron is right. So maybe we could circle these, or I'm going to put them in red, but just make sure you understand that that is the correct conjugation for all the verbs in the eos form that end in a J irregular stem. Okay, now we're going to watch a short video.
Oh, hi there. I was just sitting here thinking about the good old days of Spanish grammar. Like when we learned about the preterite tense. I remember it like it was yesterday.
In English, when you say something like, I ate the strawberries, you are using the preterite tense. The preterite tense is used to talk about actions completed in the past. It's the verb tense used most often in Spanish to talk about past events.
In English, when you say something like, I filled my car with gas, you're using the preterite tense. The preterite tense is used to talk about actions completed in the past.
But things are never completely regular in the land of language. Like English, many often used Spanish verbs are irregular in the preterite. Ir, to go, is one of these verbs. Here's how you conjugate it.
Fui, fuiste, fue, fuimos, fuisteis, fueron.
Fui al teatro. ¿Fuiste al museo? Fue al zoológico. Anoche fuimos al cine. Fuisteis a la zapatería. Fueron a la farmacia.
Yep, those were fine times. Yo fui. Oh, speaking of yo fui, did you know that in the preterite, the forms of sed are the same as the forms of id? Here, let me show you. The preterite forms of sed, to be, are fui, fuiste, fue, fuimos, fuisteis, fueron. Oh, you might notice that these irregular preterite forms do not have any accents. Don't know why that is. Guess some things just happen. To remember the conjugations of fui and fue, just remember the yo form has an a every day. The usted, el, ella form ends in an e, and that turns out to be fue. Don't you see?
Now that we've learned about id and sid, let's take a look at a preterite you already know and a few new ones.
Remember how to conjugate hacer in the preterite? Hice, hiciste, hizo, hicimos, hicisteis, hicieron.
Well, if you know how to conjugate hacer, the preterite forms of tener, estar, and poder follow a similar conjugation pattern. Let's start with tener, to have.
Tuve, tuviste, tuvo, tuvimos, tuvisteis, tuvieron.
You got that? Good. Take a look at estar, to be. Estuve, estuviste, estuvo, estuvimos, estuvisteis, estuvieron. And one more, poder, to be able. Pude, pudiste, pudo, pudimos, pudisteis, pudieron.
Now I know that's a lot to learn, but let's take a little quiz anyway.
Complete the sentences with the correct preterite form.
Ir. ¿A dónde ustedes el verano pasado?
¿A dónde fueron ustedes el verano pasado?
Poder. Tú. Entrar.
Tú pudiste entrar.
Tener. Nosotros. Un cupón de regalo.
Nosotros tuvimos un cupón de regalo.